what happens now is like people need medical intervention, but have the right to deny it, which makes sense because you don't want the government hiring experts who are loyal to the government saying who is and isn't crazy, because you and I would be on that list. Right. And we would be
and not because of our politics.
mostly because of our parenting.
You tear down the house, then you put up the rent. You pocket the cash, and you crush all dissent.
Hello and welcome to the Red Diaper Pail, episode 44, which is my lucky number twice.
No, that's good.
But 44 is not my lucky number.
No. What about 444?
Nope.
But that's on 444?
No, just 4. So this is not a lucky episode. We're recording on Saturday, June 20th, Father's Day Eve. And
the most important holiday of the year.
It is. And I should say, I haven't said what the podcast is about yet.
Hmm?
I haven't said our tagline.
Oh, go ahead.
Before we get into Father's Day.
Okay.
This is a podcast about art, culture, history, politics, technology, and parenting from a left perspective. And my name is Simone.
And I'm John Paul. And I am a father.
You're the father.
I'm the father.
So tomorrow is your day.
Mm-hmm.
But you might be unable to move.
Yeah. I've hurt my back. Because why not?
Maybe it's like a snowboarding accident or something.
Yeah. It was actually saving a kitten from a tree, and I just tweaked it a little bit, but I'll be back in fighting shape a couple days.
You peeled yourself off the couch this morning to make coffee and realized it hurt while you were grinding beans.
The scooping.
Then you had to crack 10 eggs.
Yep.
Well, if we can't slough ourselves around an arcade because you're just in too much pain, it'll be disappointing to me, but I'll survive.
I just have to be weighted on hand and foot, which is what I want anyway. So.
Okay, well, let's get into the headlines.
Okay. All right. Yes, we can move on from the most important holiday of the year. Go ahead.
It appears that the Strait of Hormuz is closed again.
It is indeed.
There was in fact a ceasefire and a signing.
There seems to still be a ceasefire,
and
at least between the U.S. and Iran.
There seems to be some sort of continuation of a deal right now.
Mm-hmm.
But they closed the Strait of Hormuz on Saturday because they said Israel had violated the ceasefire in strikes on Lebanon.
Yes. And before that, Hezbollah and Israel had signed a real ceasefire, which seemed like a step in the right direction. But since then, they've killed, it's like been some of the deadliest days since the beginning of the conflict for people in Lebanon.
I think that they had the deadliest days were this past week after the U.S. negotiated ceasefire. And then Israel did finally agree to something yesterday.
Yes.
And then something happened.
Yesterday and today has been really bad.
Israeli forces have killed 16 people in Lebanon on Saturday despite the ceasefire. So the timing is like violence, relatively deadly violence. Then they close the Strait of Hormuz today, and they are sending people to Switzerland to negotiate, including J.D. Vance and some officials from Iran. Washington, the U.S. military, the president are all focused on how to ensure that Israel doesn't take any actions in Lebanon that will trigger military response from Hezbollah, said Richard Schmierer, a former U.S. ambassador to Oman, who has expressed optimism about the talks. So I think that everyone's trying to manage Israel enough to keep them from doing anything too extreme that gets Hezbollah striking back. So my guess is that closing the strait again is Iran basically saying, like, just because they're not doing things to make Hezbollah strike back, we can't just have Israel basically ignoring the ceasefire the whole time.
Right. I mean, the play here, I guess, is it's sort of hard to say. Like, is it the case that the IDF is acting of its own accord against the wishes of the political class who have suffered a huge blow in legitimacy over this? That's one possibility. Is it possible that Hezbollah forces have not agreed to the truce, even though the Hezbollah leadership did, fired a bunch of missiles from these small villages in southern Lebanon, which is still under occupation, and then Israel took that as an excuse?
Well, no,
that's a possibility.
It sounds like everyone's saying that on the U.S. side, it sounds like they're trying to navigate Israel Israel's escalation, keeping their behavior low enough that Hezbollah doesn't respond.
But Israel's claiming that
They're getting fired.
They got hit. Their troops were shot at by a bunch of missiles, and they had casualties, and that's what they're responding to. And I think the framework of the ceasefires have been that Israel is allowed to respond to what it considers to be imminent threats or actual threats to its forces without breaking the ceasefire. So in their mind, according to them, the ceasefire is in place. There's continues to be a ceasefire, and that this exchange is over. But do you believe them?
Well, right. And I think Iran is trying to impress upon the Americans that they expect the U.S. to ensure that that Israel abides by the agreement. I think they're trying to continue to make it clear that it's not good enough for the U.S. to enter it unilaterally.
Yes.
And it's not good enough for the U.S. to be like, oh, well, I don't know what's going on with that, but we're still in a ceasefire. That they really want to like hold a little bit of our feet to the fire to say like, you have to do something about this.
Yeah. In fact, I would take it a step further and say that the most important objective for Iran at this point has to be to sharpen the conflict between the United States and Israel as much as possible. They and their partners are used to the Israelis being a completely unreliable, bad faith negotiator, right? And I think that it behooves them to take every chance to highlight just how out of sync the interests of the United States and Israel are, and to have some of that blow back on Israel, right?
Yeah.
Because they understand that this shit will happen over and over again until there is some sort of like permanent power rearrangement, which maybe sees Israel sort of push back into more of a proxy status than whatever it has become now. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they would close the strait, and it doesn't surprise me at all that apparently is going to be. They're on their way. Vance and the Iranian team had passed on like a first meeting, but now they're all headed to, I don't know, wherever they're going.
Switzerland.
They're actually going to meet, and this is the first thing on the agenda. I think that's not a surprise to me that that's what they care about the most. But the press is, I mean, it's interesting that the press is not saying that that Hezbollah has broke this. They're not saying that Hezbollah is attacking Israel. They're saying that Israel is attacking Lebanon, and that that's a real problem for the United States. Like, that's the framework in which this is being reported by the major news outlets.
NBC News, quote, early Saturday, Israeli strikes killed at least 16 people, including 2 children, according to the Lebanese civil defense and media, one day after the U.S. said Israel and Hezbollah had implemented a fresh ceasefire upon Donald Trump's request.
Yeah.
Israel hit a series of towns across Lebanon's south early Saturday. Lebanese news agency NNA reported an airstrike on the town of Arab Salim, reported killed 3 people. A previous waves of strikes on Friday had killed 83 people. A statement from the IDF said Hezbollah, an Iran-backed militant group, had breached the ceasefire and launched more than 50 projectiles towards IDF overnight. So the timeline here, but Hezbollah says they've adhered since Friday evening. So there's not agreement about who's attacking who or the timeline.
Yeah.
But you're right. The U.S. media is leading with the Israel 16 dead, and Iran saying the straits closed as a first step in response to the violations of the ceasefire.
And there's no, as far as I can tell, there's no one who's confirming Israel's reports. Everyone's reporting Israel saying that they were attacked, but there's no third party saying we've verified this in any way. That's not very common, though. I think that almost always this is fog of war. We have no idea. The only reliable parties are the parties involved, right? So it's very hard to say, but I think the shift in tone in the media is important.
Is anyone from Israel going to Switzerland?
That's been their primary concern, and they're screaming and yelling about it, that they expect that what they have achieved on the battlefield to be considered in negotiations, and that is not been all.
Are they not invited to negotiations, or they're not showing up to negotiations?
They're not invited.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the headline is next week. This is a very interesting turn.
It is. Whatever psychiatrist that they hired the Iranians to deal with Trump, he's decided that the Iranians are the most interesting people on the planet and the ones he'd like to know the best. Like, that's hilarious. Where he's like, these people they're pretty smart. They're, they know what they're doing. They're very sophisticated.
Maybe it was Esther Perel.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be a podcast coming out.
That'd be great. I mean, can you imagine the book? Please write a book.
Okay, so here is another horrible headline.
It's like if someone took Silence of the Lambs and tried to turn it into a comedy, a Broadway comedy. Going to visit the crazy person, the psychiatrist is going to visit the crazy person to figure out how to end the war.
Oh, God. Okay. The Justice Department, this is the ACLU, the Justice Department is trying to undermine hard-won protections that guard disabled people's rights to live in community instead of institutions. This doesn't change the law or our rights. We will not stop fighting for disabled people's right to participate in community and civic life. The headline here, DOJ memo stokes fear among disability advocates of a return to institutionalization. The Office of Legal Counsel opinion says states are not actually required by law to integrate mentally disabled patients with their peers by providing community or home-based care, a finding experts say run counter to long-standing legal precedent and would lead to the greatest rate of institutionalizing people with disabilities. CBS News. So they released some sort of opinion on this, the Office of Legal Counsel, which is part of the DOJ, which what I would interpret as sort of like soft launching their legal position on protecting disability rights.
Yeah.
In particular, the institutionalization thing, which Donald Trump has spoken about. Like, he's like pretty obsessed. He talks about this building that he was like very striking to him as a child. It was a big building and it was an institution for people. And he has these very fond feelings about institutions for people. So I'm not at all surprised. Also, this is like, the next step in fascism. But this would be a huge departure in how people with disabilities have been treated in the United States for the last
since Reagan did
30 years. Yeah. Monday marks 27 years since the Supreme Court's Olmstead versus LC ruling, when Lois Curtis secured disabled people's rights to live free from institutionalization. So that's that's the ADA winning 27 years ago, which is right around beginning of 2000s. But deinstitutionalization happened, decades before that.
So this was not just the end of institutions, but the right to not be stuck in one, I guess.
Right. Basically, you have to offer mainstream options, like mainstreaming, similar to like what you see in schools.
Sure. So I think there is no intention here to like care for people.
No.
The intention is to criminalize people and to give people another group of people to like hate and despise and sort of revel in the harm that comes to them.
And kidnap and indefinitely detain.
Right. And the institutions that people were released from were like, just throw them all into like a pen and whatever happens. Like not bathing them, not access to bathrooms. Just that was sort of the life for a lot of people before institutionalization. That being said, like the current system is also like nuts, and you should not like. What happens now is like people need medical intervention, but have the right to deny it, which makes sense because you don't want the government hiring experts who are loyal to the government saying who is and isn't crazy, because you and I would be on that list. Right. And we would be
and not because of our politics.
Mostly because of our parenting. Also our politics. So you sort of
because our parenting looks crazy, or because our parenting's made us crazy.
Right. A little bit of both. So what ends up happening then is all of these systems wait for you to break the law. Because at the point you break the law, then you can be stripped of your rights legally. That includes institutionalization,
right,
and also forcing you to take meds against your will.
Right.
So people who need medical intervention because they're having a psychotic break clearly need intervention.
Yeah, but they don't get to have it. They slip through the cracks until something terrible happens.
So then they do something that loads them up with jail time.
Yeah.
And then they get the help they need, and then they're back to being who they were before, plus a really terrible court case.
Yeah.
Which is that this system doesn't work either. So I don't know what the solution is. Like, this is one of those things where like, what is worse, like trusting the government with these powers or just letting it be a free for all?
In normal times we could have that debate, but this is just like nothing about this solution is correct, even if there are things that it in theory could be better at, because this is just the Trump White House following like the Nazi playbook.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I want to point out that like the neoliberal playbook has also been very bad for people. This isn't freedom versus slavery. It's something very much like malignant neglect versus malignant attention.
I mean, I think that
abuse versus neglect.
I don't think a society like ours can have a good solution to this, because it's not built in there's no concepts of like community care or collective care or collective decision making. So
Some said,
when
well,
you don't have that,
going to overwhelm the system.
Yeah,
Almost immediately.
if you don't have any of those frameworks in place, the best thing you could have is like Band-Aid reforms, which we aren't going to have anymore because they're going to get stripped of all funding. And then apparently we're also going to strip the people of their rights. Then we're going to detain them all.
Yep.
I mean, this is very related to the stuff that happened with DOE last week, which is the removal of the moving out of the DOE things related to IEPs and special education needs into RFK's Wacky Circus Museum, where obviously one would never expect the Department of Health and Human Services to do anything positive for people with special needs or disabilities.
Yeah, it's
especially because they're the made up victim of the vaccine scare. They don't believe people like that. People who are differently abled should exist. They believe they're like a tear in the matrix.
Yeah, it's a funny line that he's walking, because what he wants to do is attack the vaccine thing by painting normal people as the victims, having made them not normal anymore.
Or the parents who then now have to deal with a not normal kid.
Right.
You're the victim. The parent is the victim.
Yeah. But then what you realize is that there is no concern for anyone involved. There's only an attempt to like paint them as, like you said, like a medical experiment gone wrong that must be dealt with, which is they're not like you. They are fundamentally broken.
Something is gone.
Right?
Yeah.
It's something in their brain was destroyed, so they're not like you. They can't be part of society like everyone else.
And society shouldn't have to deal with them. We should just fix the problem that went. It's sort of like we shouldn't be burdened with this. We made a mistake. This was a mistake.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to seeing them as like a normal part of like human variation.
Yeah.
Yeah. A pathology that needs to be erased.
All right. On the theme of kidnapping and detaining people. This is not a headline. This is a academic paper that came out of the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School last month, called Icing the Economy, Immigration Enforcement Under Trump 2.0 and the Local Economic Activity by Exequiel Hernandez.
I'm just like that Trump 2.0 is the academic term.
And I'm going to read the abstract. In January 2025, U.S. immigration enforcement expanded sharply and moved from the border to the interior. I estimate the economic spillovers of this new regime in targeted metropolitan areas using our data on 5,388 geocoded ICE raids combined with foot traffic and spending data for the 5.4 million points of interest, or POI. Foot traffic falls 2.7% and spending declines 6.2% per POI per week, or 8.1 billion fewer visits and up to $14 billion in foregone spending in a single year. Effects intensified near raid sites do not dissipate over time and are remarkably general. Declines occur regardless of neighborhood demography, affect workplaces and consumer-facing stores across myriad industries, and trigger no substitution to online shopping. The breadth of the local economic damage mirrors the breadth of the enforcement approach.
This is fascinating. I think there's very, very important questions to ask about the fundamental economic motivations of this. Then like MAGA rank and file believes that immigrants do two things. They suck up resources which are finite, and that's a key part of like the conservative mindset is resources are finite always. Two finite resources. One is they suck up all the jobs, and two is they suck up all the benefits, which is those are mutually exclusive. Like you cannot work and pay taxes and produce more for society than you take, and that's unfair because it's driving down wages for everyone else, and simultaneously suck up all the resources without contributing to society at the same time. You can't do those two things at the same time. But anyway, I digress.
Well, but the question is there truly an economic reason that Trump 2.0 and their ilk decided to start removing people from the workforce?
Yeah, and I've been thinking about that for a while. I think there's a couple of arguments. One may be that they see that American society as primarily a bunch of service workers and then a large group of consumers that really don't work that much. They don't produce that much. That's real production. is a huge problem when you're preparing for war, because those people expect to be served. They don't expect to like do anything, and they're up against industrial societies where people are like, used to following orders, used to like a certain level of getting their hands dirty. So I think part of this like bringing the factories back thing is like we need to get like what they consider to be normal Americans, which is like white lower middle class people working again. So they have to have them slip into these jobs and get this what they consider to essentially be like foreign slave labor back to where they came from.
Yeah, I don't think there's any economic reason behind it. I think that it's purely a opportunist, useful, fascist political turn.
So it's a form of like fascist, self-defeating fascist bullshit.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily self-defeating. It might be that like even if it doesn't have an economic logic, and even if it has economic results that are negative, it might still be politically more useful to pursue that than to not pursue it. So like as far as like building your base and stoking nationalism, stoking fear, which might have an economic impact but might not. But I truly believe it's mostly a political project.
Like we would pay X amount of dollars
in order to do this.
We would lose GDP. We would lose tax revenue. We would lose a very easily exploited labor force if it meant we could get these knock-on effects, which we want. You know, if you told me that the entire thing was an excuse to build ICE as like a national fascist paramilitary and that they just needed anybody, I would believe that, I guess. Yeah. And they've sunk a ton of new money into ICE.
Well, here's some more economic data.
Okay.
This is from the Brookings Institute. They also released an economic research on the economic impact. They found that enforcement surges cost 668,000 jobs. Across the cities with the sharpest rise in ICE arrests, employment fell 0.73% below what they would have seen absent the surge, and 1.48% in the 51 cities observed at least 6 months out. So that's a further fall in employment. Mm-hmm. Job losses far exceeded the number of people actually arrested. Across 86 surge cities, ICE made roughly 52,000 excess arrests. Yet each excess arrest, as a proxy for the broader enforcement shock, is associated with 13 jobs lost overall.
Holy moly.
Of the 668,000 jobs lost, an estimated 51,000 to 297,000 would have been held by American-born workers.
Right. And this is like, it's important for people to sit with like, why is that? Are people getting scared? American citizens are getting too scared to go to work? No. Immigrant people contribute far more to the economy than they take.
Yes.
This is true of working people who work for a living in general. And it's something that everyone needs to, this is the fundamental deceit of capitalist society.
And you have to think about the impact of a local industry during a surge. So if you think of like construction or landscaping or hotel accommodations, and there's a surge that suddenly you lose several people and other people of that country of origin stay home, then those companies immediately have to scale back operation.
Yep.
They don't, which means other people lose their jobs. It's like there's no way to function with that kind of disruption.
Right. Yeah. And then the knock-on effects of those people who are not working are not buying things, right? The boss for the company is not getting profit, which then they spend on growing the business or buying themselves a new sports car or whatever it is. So there's this is the knock-on effect.
That's why you see arts and entertainment industries having job losses, not because they're not high immigrant worker industries, but people go and spend money on arts and entertainment.
Yeah.
And if they are scared to go out,
yeah,
or they are currently detained, they're not spending any money.
Yeah, and a lot of these,
they're spending money in a different way because the private prison is getting money, but
yeah, that has nothing to do with like the places that are limping along on Main Street who can't afford a 5 to 10% reduction in customers for months at a time, right? That they're barely eking by as it is. They're looking to grow, and instead they're shrinking. And that, again, we're not talking about tax revenue yet. We're not talking about contributions to Social Security and Medicaid, which undocumented immigrants pay into but can't get any of. So not to mention rent, right? All of these things that they just, for one thing, they produce profit for somebody, and two is the pay that they have, they spend. Yeah, this is going to continue to happen. And it's part of, I think, like a planned retraction.
Well, so then you say, if you look at where they did ICE surges, it's predominantly in blue states, although a lot in Texas and Florida, which are not blue states. But there was targeting of blue cities. Mm-hmm. So is it economic warfare? Is it a deliberate, like, weakening of certain. I mean, this might be giving them too much credit, but
I mean, do you really want to attack blue cities and blue states that are doing all the economic activity that red states
rely on.
relying
I
on?
know. No, of
Like
course
that,
not.
like I do think that you hit these things. Like Volcker understood this very well. Is we are going to get to a new promised land, which is neoliberalism, but we need to break a bunch of shit first, right? We need to have an economic pain for 2 years. So as part of a strategy towards that, I think there's some interesting hypotheses of like what is the vision for an American that has a functioning economy that requires like a reduction in the overall population, and this is one convenient way to do that. But I like you, I'm not sure. Like it's very hard to say whether they have a plan or whether the social engineering part is primary to them. They don't have a serious mindset about like the material, like the basis and the superstructure. Like they don't have a base that they're grasping for. They're just sort of like raging against the dying of the light here. So we'll see. I mean, I'm working on I'm working on a theory that can explain it, which is that they're trying to like really turn America into a rentier state, and that in that case they really don't need people who aren't like bought into America. But even like major rentier states like Saudi Arabia have a huge non-citizen slave service economy that supports it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a puzzling it's a puzzling thing economically.
Okay. So last week we had the U.S. government tell Anthropic to stop using its latest models.
Yeah.
Or stop making them available to people, with the logic being like people who could be dangerous to the United States could get access to it. And then this week we have
because it's capable of being used as a weapon.
Because basically it's too powerful and we have to make sure it doesn't get into the hands of like foreigners. So then this week,
including the people who work for Anthropic.
This week G7, and then there's a whole thing with the Anthropic and the feds, which is just that they're lashing back out at Anthropic because of the drama of Anthropic not letting them use their model to do things that Anthropic doesn't think are properly ethical. So there's like whatever that is. I don't.
Right. And when you say that, you don't mean dropping bombs on girls' schools in Iran. Anthropic was okay with that. There was other things that they didn't want.
That was, of course, fine.
Yeah.
And of course, that drama all preceded that, and then they still had the model loaded in. The model still did the kill all the schoolgirls. So I really don't know. Yeah. I mean, who's the good guy here? But then this week, the G7 leaders discuss, quote, trusted partners, end quote, access to cutting edge US AI models. G7 leaders, this is Reuters, G7 leaders discussed a plan to grant selected, quote, trusted partners access to advanced AI models from US firms such as Anthropic, 3 diplomatic sources said on Tuesday, potentially opening a path around restrictions on non-American use. This is basically an agreement that allows broader access to these advanced models in certain countries, ensuring that, I guess, China doesn't get their hands on it, or ensuring that like the cybersecurity defenses are properly accounted for against China. So they're trying to figure out which nations would get access and how they would work together to have access to these advanced models so that they could, I guess, prepare for like broader cybersecurity defenses against rivals such as China in a more like collective way.
Right. This is the problem with bottling a model like this, is because I don't know much about like cybersecurity, so I'm not an expert in this, but my understanding is like you want capabilities out in the open because you want defenses to be built for them. You don't want the capability to be hidden until you're at war. Like you want them you want people sort of crowdsourcing the solutions to problems as they develop.
Yeah, and so cybersecurity experts believe Anthropic's Mythos, which is a model designed to find flaws in computer code, can turbocharge attacks on systems, but also can turbocharge cybersecurity for the systems. And so the European Union wants access to Mythos. And Trump's order told Anthropic that they had given access to Mythos to certain organizations. And then Trump basically said, you can't give access to anyone because we think it's a security threat.
Yeah.
So they're now all these political and techno oligarch power brokers are going to try to come up with a system of privileges of who gets access.
Yeah, which will not be you and me.
It will not be us.
Right, and
I'm on the wait list. I'm on the library wait list. I have to wait 16 weeks before my large language model comes off of hold.
Okay.
Not that they should do it. They should put the librarians in charge.
Well, if the librarians
Duh.
are charged with AI, I don't think anyone would object to it. They are going to have AIs that you don't have. This is something I've been thinking about a lot. They're going to have AIs.
They're going to have everything you don't have. They not only will have all the models, all these models that you didn't even know existed, but they're the only ones that have the power to run the models.
Right.
Because they own all the data and they own all the compute and they own all the data center and they own all the real estate and they have all the money.
Code.
Yeah, no, but even that, even if the code gets leaked, like you need most of the horrible things they're going to do require owning all the data on all the people on Earth. And being able to do something with it, which means the code's very important. But let's just pretend a little birdie slips you the code.
Yeah.
You need significant computing power.
Yeah.
And only the billionaires will have enough access. So
Yeah,
it's already
it's
rigged. It's fully rigged. Surveillance capitalism, the use of data and surveillance capitalism has been long rigged.
There is a number of ways to like structure a network, and our like way of like centralized data storage and streaming versus like local data storage. Those are not, the former is not necessarily more efficient than the latter, but because they wanted like direct central control, that's what you have. And the same is true of compute. Like you're paying for compute. Now the AIs, you're not paying enough for compute, but you're paying for like
it's not profitable.
All these things, right? But if it was profitable, it would mean that like somehow the compute is being paid for.
It's not profitable, even though it's probably one of the most expensive monthly subscriptions you pay for.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Just it's not profitable.
And they're talking about reducing the price, which is crazy because they don't have enough customers. But
why do they want more customers if it's not profitable? Because they want to extract data from you.
Because I think that they feel that adoption is one of the main, like, you don't get to be Uber unless people start using the app. That's a huge part of it. But
the licensing model you have to get hooked. And this is also like you get hooked on Facebook. But also they are losing money and resources by having you use the models essentially at their financial loss, but they're gaining all the data.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, these guys are all going to figure this out.
I mean, Peter Thiel has an AI right now, which he wakes up every morning and plots world domination with. Like, I want you to make me as much money as possible today. I want you to do it automated. The capabilities of this thing are somewhat reduced now, but the point is like, the codes prevents you from using it that way, but these people will unlock capabilities for themselves that they won't tell you about. And I guess
it's already true.
But this will be the legal framework for it, which is it's a national security threat for anyone besides a set of tech oligarchs, and I guess some like state officials from Europe to have access to it. So that'll be fun. The scary things about AI are all in like the ways that human beings will use it.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Do you know that Peter Thiel has a quote in which he explains how Gandalf is really the bad guy and Mordor is really advanced technologically, the technological logical society?
Oh my God.
Like I don't know if any of these guys really think these things or they're just like literally just trolls, but like he's got Tolkien reversed in his like imagination palace.
Yeah. I mean, they have alienated themselves from their own and everyone else's humanity to such an extent that everything is now an engineering problem, with them as the central beneficiary of every question they ask. So it doesn't surprise me too much. It's like if he says, I wish I could look at the world more like what a cold, emotionless machine looked at it as. That's what I aspire to. And it makes you want, like, he does that with Mordor. He's walking around doing these lectures on the Antichrist. How long before he's like, the Antichrist was right, God was wrong? You know, the rebellion.
Well, I thought
the rebellion that Lucifer mounted was the right thing.
I mean, don't people think that what he's really saying is he's the Antichrist in these talks?
I mean, I don't know.
Who knows what he's really saying? I mean, some of these. I mean, I'd like to understand. Do we know anything about his upbringing?
I don't know anything about his upbringing. It doesn't matter. I mean, he'd be a completely different person if PayPal goes belly up. This is not who he ends up as. Like it's completely a product of.
One wonders if something went a little sideways.
This is what capitalism does to even the people who win it.
That's for sure. Okay, well, that is the last of the horrible headlines, and on to the
artifact.
With both of your hands, but candles will burn, and time will reveal that you've done and the money you steal. The suffering you're causing gives you no pause for thought. You've got your claws in the dead summer's heart. Birds will return, as the birds always do. When they come home to roost, they'll feast on you.